The Mediterranean Sea almost vanished millions of years ago, and here's why. Around 5.5 million years ago, almost 3/4 of the Mediterranean Sea evaporated into the air, and new research helps to explain what caused this event known as the Messinian Salinity Crisis, MSC for short. The extreme evaporation event actually happened in two phases, according to the international team behind the new study. By analyzing chlorine isotopes in the salt deposited on the seabed, the building numerical models and simulations, the researchers were able to chart when, where, and how 70% of the Mediterranean water was lost. The first phase covered 35,000 years of restricted water flow between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean via what is now the Strait of Gibraltar. As the seawater was not getting refreshed with fresh water, that restriction sped up the deposit of salts and water evaporation in the Mediterranean. In the second phase, across the next 10,000 years, the Mediterranean Sea was completely isolated and the whole process accelerated. The researchers, led by earth science scientist Giovanni Aloisi from the French National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS, found that in some areas water levels would have dropped as much as 2.1 kilometers, that's 1.3 miles. As the water receded in phase 2, the underwater ridge across the Strait of Sicily would not have become exposed, the team suggests, effectively splitting the Mediterranean Sea into two and forming a land bridge between Africa and Europe. Italy and Sicily, and just across from that is, of course, North Africa. So that in turn led to faster rates of evaporation in the eastern Mediterranean, where the biggest drops in sea level would have been, and most salt deposits were found across both of these phases. Scientists have long debated how the MSC came about, and whether or not it happened when the Mediterranean was fully cut off from the Atlantic. This new study suggests both schools of thought are right, that it was a two-phase process. The researchers don't dive deeply into why the Mediterranean became isolated, but the late Miocene was a time of extensive dramatic tectonic activity. The MSC itself would have caused even more tumult as pressure lifted on the surface crust and surrounding areas dried out. The huge size of the Mediterranean depression created by MSC water level drawdown, corresponding to a volume loss of 69% of the Mediterranean water body, would have generated planetary scale climate effects, including changes in precipitation patterns, a scenario suggested by rainfall proxy data, write the authors in their published paper. Today, the Strait of Gibraltar is much wider and deeper than it was during phase 1 of MSC. If it was not for this connection to the Atlantic Ocean, it's estimated that today the sea level in the Mediterranean would be dropping by about 0.5 meter every year. That's 1.5 feet, 20 inches every year. Eventually, the Zanclean flood event reversed the impact of the MSC, but this new study offers valuable insight into not just the Mediterranean Sea, but changes across the whole region during this formative time in history. Our results have broader implications for the biological, geological, and climatic evolution of the Mediterranean realm and beyond, the writers say, and the research was published in Nature Communications. This is on Science Alert by David Neild. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.